Do you think a complete ceasefire is realistic within a couple of weeks, as U.S. Special Representative Steve Witkoff suggested? Also, is the U.S. asking Ukraine to take any steps toward a partial or full ceasefire? We've heard Putin's demands. Are these being passed on to Ukraine by the U.S., particularly regarding mobilization and other matters? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Regarding a partial ceasefire, we've received signals from the U.S. that it likely involves an energy ceasefire, avoiding attacks on energy infrastructure and civilian infrastructure. I told President Trump that civilian infrastructure is a broad term, so we agreed to prepare a list of priority objects, including railways and ports. As for a complete ceasefire in 2 to 3 weeks, it could be similar to our first meeting with the U.S. in Saudi Arabia. We initially aimed for a ceasefire in the air and sea, but left with the understanding that we could work toward a full ceasefire. Something similar could happen here too.
In your conversation with President Trump, he mentioned the U.S. might take control of Ukrainian nuclear power plants. Do you support this idea? How would it work? Also, do you feel President Trump is pressuring Russia for concessions or focusing more on pressuring Ukraine for a peace agreement? Thank you.
Thank you. I want to be absolutely frank. Today, I didn't feel any pressure from President Trump. There was none. And that's a fact. You know that I'm an open person, and if there had been any pressure, I would have said so clearly. As for the nuclear power stations, let's first address what we talked about. We discussed meetings, prisoner exchanges, and very difficult issues related to children. And honestly, at the moment, I don't think anyone has a clear vision on how to bring all the children back. That's something that's very difficult, and I'm sharing this with you. Now, regarding the ceasefire, we need to move very quickly toward a complete ceasefire. I requested that this should happen through direct, strong actions from the U.S. toward the Russian Federation. But let's start with what's being proposed. I think what's being proposed is already quite positive. We also discussed the situation at the nuclear power plant. The issue wasn't about controlling a network of power plants, but specifically the plant currently under temporary occupation, which, as you know, is at risk because Russia controls it with weapons. It is not functioning because Russia is illegally occupying it. The question was whether we can restore this plant. I said that just restoring the plant itself isn't enough, as it would need the right infrastructure, water supply, and technical staff. There are many steps required for the plant to start generating electricity and providing the power it should in 1.5 to 2.5 years. President Trump asked if America could help restore it. I said yes. If it's about modernizing and investing, we are ready to discuss it. But we were only talking about one plant that is under Russian occupation.
You discussed the issue of our territories. And also, today, there was information that the Americans might have lost data on 30,000 deported Ukrainian children. You mentioned that in your meeting with Trump this issue was brought up. Could you share more about that?
Look, first of all, I want to emphasize very clearly that the territorial issue will be the most difficult. I feel this, we understand this, and it will be a challenge for all of us. We will defend Ukraine to the utmost in this regard, but it's going to be tough. President Trump and I discussed this, and he understands completely that we do not recognize any territorial changes. I had a point today in our discussion, but I won't go into all the details of what we talked about on this matter because I honestly believe, and I told him this today, I don't want to go too deep into it for one simple reason. I believe we will have several stages of negotiation. If there's no immediate full ceasefire, then there will be a partial one. First, partial, then eventually a full ceasefire. I believe that will happen, and I think we are close to making such decisions. If the Americans push hard enough, they will succeed, because we are committed to this, and Europe, all of us, supports it. When we move on to the more difficult period, and I mean the diplomatic one, we understand that our people find it hard, but they must understand that we fear nothing, and we will get through this. Right now, this is the easiest stage of our diplomatic efforts compared to what lies ahead. I am absolutely ready for this, and I want us all to be calm as a country. We must be prepared for any talks. These are conversations. We have a clear position, which I believe is just and correct, and we are right to raise our voices on this issue. That's why I told President Trump's team that we must take these first steps and then move toward ending the war, including the issue of territorial integrity. I gave an example today. I explained that there's justice and strength. I understand that Russia controls certain territories, but there's also logic in this. We have regions, cities, and towns that are divided by the contact line. If you leave this line in some places, you will simply leave entire areas or towns uninhabitable. People won't return to half the city. And if this happens with larger cities, it will be like Berlin. I told President Trump frankly, do we want a Berlin-like situation? Or do we want many cities like that? I think we both understood each other, and we agreed that a Berlin Wall is not an option. So, we'll try to manage this issue. And that's about territories. Regarding children, look, it's clear that children must return.
Are you confident that a ceasefire can be achieved quickly? But you also said that you're not sure that President Putin wants peace. Why are you so confident that a ceasefire can be reached? And is there a willingness from President Trump to put the necessary pressure on President Putin?
Regarding the possibility of quickly achieving a ceasefire, I believe it can happen. Why do I think the war can end quickly? Because when there's a ceasefire, there's political will. Even if one of the leaders wants to provoke or escalate things, if there's political will and it's announced to the world, then that opens up a window of opportunity. A ceasefire for a month or two creates an opportunity to form a plan and put pressure on anyone who violates it, so we can end the war. If the ceasefire lasts for years, that's a frozen conflict, and that's not the end of the war. It's a perpetual frozen conflict where we don't know when an outbreak of violence could occur again. This is why I believe that a ceasefire offers the chance to end the war sooner. This is my personal experience, the breakdowns in ceasefires with the Russians, our agreements and disagreements with them, and what I've observed. Now, regarding Putin, does he want peace? No, he doesn't. Why? First, because he is not in a weak position. He is not in a winning position, but he's not weak on the battlefield. Yes, I think his initiative was stronger 6 months ago. Today, his position on the battlefield is weaker. Why else does he not want peace? He doesn't want us to remain with even one soldier in the Kursk region. He doesn't want a ceasefire until our forces are gone from the Kursk region, and I'm absolutely sure of that. Third, he's gathering more forces to strike us and apply more pressure. That's been his strategy after the 2014 occupation. He uses pressure on all fronts, scaring people, launching missile strikes. He aims to pressure us into a better position for a future peace deal. But why do I think the war can still end? Why can the first step toward peace happen? Because for years during the full-scale war and occupation since 2014, Putin has told everyone that Ukraine doesn't want peace, that Ukraine sabotages ceasefire opportunities, that we don't want the war to end. What has Ukraine demonstrated today? Ukraine wants peace. Ukraine is stronger than Putin claimed, that we could be taken over, and Ukraine is ready for a full ceasefire without any conditions. In this situation, Putin will have to make some kind of move, at least show that he wants peace. Otherwise, everything he's said and done so far will not only be untrue for us, because we don't believe him, But it will also be evident to other countries, even those who were closer to him, and they will no longer understand him. We've received signals from many countries that Ukraine has taken a very strong, tactical, and brave step, ready for a ceasefire without conditions. This is concrete proof that Ukraine wants peace. And now Putin will have to move to show something.